Hey guys, in this video, I want to talk about surprising things that avoidant people and anxious people have in common. And I want to talk about 3 things in particular that you might not be expecting. I always like to say that we have a lot of the same traumas from our backgrounds, a lot of the same generational trauma issues that are running through our families, but over time, learn different coping mechanisms. They develop different patterns and strategies for dealing with those traumas. But the way people talk about avoidant attachment, they talk about it like it's some big mystery, like it's some secret code that you need to access, like it's the freaking Bermuda Triangle. It's not that deep. I just think the difference between avoidant attachment and anxious attachment is there's just way more anxiously attached people that are online talking about it, opening up, going into Reddit, going on YouTube, creating content as content creators versus avoidant attachment. So it feels like this big mystery. But I think that's why also that there's this trend of scapegoating avoidant attachment by people who are limerent, people who have cluster B, some sort of cluster B profile of traits and feel very entitled to another person who doesn't want to be with them. So smack the avoidant label onto them. By people who have love addiction, unrequited love, and Crappy Childhood Fairy, love her channel. She talks about this a lot. She even has a term for it, which is called the limerent twist, which I think is great, which is where someone who has limerent tendencies can't discern when they're just not compatible with somebody, something's ran its course, something didn't even last very long, it wasn't that deep, but because they have those limerent tendencies, they justify their obsession over another person as, oh, well, they were probably avoidant, right? Maybe they were avoidant. So some of these are the reasons why I wanted to make this video. So let's get into it then. Actually, first I should say, if you're brand new to my channel, welcome to Confessions of an Avoidant. My name is Wando, and now let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing is a fear of abandonment. Yes. And all attachment professionals talk about abandonment anxieties being part of the motivations of avoidant coping mechanisms. Fears of asking for help, commitment, expressing emotions, and mistrust, they're all linked to abandonment wounds. And yet, a fear of abandonment on the internet is often talked about as if it's this solely anxious issue. And it makes sense in the upbringings of a lot of avoidant people. There was a lot of repeated abandonment. There was a lot of emotional neglect. I talked about in another video, I used this example of how me and my sister would, when we were done with school, have to call one of my parents who would be home a lot to come pick us up, and they wouldn't come, and we'd have to find our own way home. Sometimes we'd have to call a neighbor. Sometimes they'd finally come and pick us up, and we'd just be stuck at school for hours. And that is repeated, recurring, a caregiver being like, nope, I'm abandoning you. You figure it out. I'm not coming. I felt abandoned repeatedly by my caregivers often. So I think for avoidant people, how that presents as adults, there's actually a lot of similarities with anxious people. You know, for example, if you are single and you're dating and maybe you've gone on a couple of dates with somebody, maybe a more anxious person might be freaking out about the outcome of someone that they really like. And they're like, oh, I hope this goes somewhere. And maybe they manage those anxieties by over texting and if someone doesn't text back right away, they kind of build in their head this extra anxiety that they feel like they have to manage by then texting again and texting again. For avoidant people, I don't speak for all avoidant people, of course, but for me, I deal with a lot of those same anxieties when I'm newly dating and exciting about somebody. And I too am excited about the outcome of someone that maybe I've gone on a couple dates with and I think they're great. But then I'll freak out if I don't get a text sooner. And then my avoidant coping mechanism is to kind of reject my desired outcome and almost starve myself of getting too invested in the person if I get triggered because they didn't text me back sooner or they haven't planned the third date yet or whatever. I deal with those same anxieties, but I just have a completely different coping mechanism. And I guess maybe the avoidant repercussion of that is maybe the other person doesn't think I'm as interested in them. I don't know. The second thing is people pleasing. People pleasing is often this thing that's talked about and assigned more to more anxious people. But honey, avoidant people, we struggle with people pleasing. And we people please through avoiding, avoiding conversations, avoiding saying how we really feel, avoiding putting ourselves out there, which makes sense. If you have caregivers who are constantly emotionally neglecting you and making you feel like your presence and your needs are annoying them, making life hard for them, they're setting off their rage and whatever, you learn as an avoidant person, well, I'm just going to keep my needs to myself. I'm going to go hide in my room and just be someone who's so inoffensive, whatever, whichever one, so inoffensive to my caregiver that they will always be pleased by me because I just stay out of their way. That way I never get in trouble. No one's ever mad at me. No one ever disappoints me because I don't have an expectation anyway. And it's a win-win for everybody. Those kind of patterns in my childhood definitely affect how I am as an adult in my people pleasing. And I'll just give an example. In my job, I have to train these two people to do this task. And one of them is really, really, really bad at it. And even though it's making my life more difficult to have to like pick up the work that they are just not good at, I'd rather like pick up the work and be like miserable than like, I don't know, have a conversation with my manager and be like, this person is just not good at this task. Or like, I'm so deathly afraid of like making them feel like I threw them under the bus in any way. That's a work example. So I'm going to leave links in the description for anyone who is just hearing about this for the first time and wants to explore other content about all the different ways your attachment style shows up in your life. The last thing is a fear of loneliness, and all the insecure attached styles and secure attached style, duh. Everybody has a fear of loneliness. Everybody. And it makes sense, of course, for avoidant people that we have a fear of loneliness because we were recurringly neglected in our upbringings. And so, sorry, this is going to sound like the Matrix here, but hear me out. We learned that because of the neglect we were getting from our caregivers, that we could expect to be alone. We got good at tempering our expectations by just learning to disconnect ourselves and not feel like we should invest emotionally too much in expectations that we have of our caregivers because we don't want to feel that rejection and that loneliness that comes with it and that feeling of we're not good enough, we're not special, all of that shame that comes with that. And we learned to get really comfortable with being alone. But I do think that the reality is, for a lot of avoidance that I know for sure, is that while we can be pretty comfortable with our autonomy and having our alone time in our space, like we do get lonely. And I think what a lot of avoidant people struggle with is because they're so deep in their systems and patterns for avoiding feelings of neglect or avoiding rejection. We kind of create loneliness, but then we don't always know how to get out of it, what to do about it. And I'm getting emotional. I feel like that's something I'm kind of dealing with in my life at this moment. Why am I crying? I'm actually a big crier. I cry a lot, but I've been proud of myself because I haven't cried on my YouTube videos yet. But I guess I'm crying because this is something that I just feel like is a struggle in my life. And crap, why am I crying? I guess I do feel lonely, and it's not great. And I know I should do things about it. And I know I should put myself out there more and try harder. But trying hard is really hard. And I know that anyone watching this video and watching this channel can struggle with knowing they should do something and knowing that there's a better way to do things. But like all of your subconscious systems are just like stopping you from just doing the thing that like you're learning about through self-help and attachment and all those things. And it's just easier said than done. Like the Casey Musgraves song, easier said than done. So some of these are the reasons why I wanted to make this video, and just really want people to know, like, avoiding attachment is not that deep. It's not that mysterious. Stop assigning too much like power to it as this mystical, mysterious thing. If you're not sure whether or not you're dating an avoidant person or you have an avoidant person in your life, I do have a quiz. Are you dating an avoidant? Linked in the description. So feel free to check that out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.